then I'll show you some other projects that I work on and talk to you a little bit about them. Stiles, we're fully integrated real estate company, so that means that for the most part, we really can handle everything that we need to handle development projects internally. So we have at the top of a development firm, so that's where I work, and we are split in. We have a multifamily group, and we have a commercial group. They handle office and industrial products, and then I work in the retail group. And we have our own architecture firm, so when I'm developing projects, we work with our architecture group. We have our own construction firm, so for the most part, we work with our own construction firm as well. They construct our projects. Once we finish it, we have a tenant improvement division, so once we build the shell, then we actually have another department that kind of goes out and finishes off with all the tenant requirements. Then when we're finished, we have a property management firm that also handles property management on a long-term basis. We work with our own leasing and brokerage team as well. So we have office brokers and retail brokers. So I do all the leasing is handled through our own leasing department. And then we have up there an asset management and acquisitions team. They fall under financial services where Kyle works. So once we finish developing a project, we hand it off to property management, and then we hand it off to asset management, and they serve as the owner's representative for the project. We also have an acquisitions team, so they're a little bit separate from us in development, and they buy and sell and redevelop their own properties. We have offices. We're headquartered here in Fort Lauderdale, but we do have offices all over Florida, and we do some work in Nashville and Charlotte as well. And our motto is invest, build, manage, because we can handle all of those things for one, so we consider ourselves a one-stop shop for real estate development. We, again, sort of at the top, we have split into the investment group, which is investment services, financial services, and development. We're the ones who kind of build, division, buy and sell the properties and develop them. Then we have the construction, architecture, and tenant improvements. We handle the building, and then property management, asset management, realty. They do all of the management for our properties. This is our big project that we're working on. It's called the Main Las Olas. We assembled two properties downtown next to our headquarters. It's about 2.7 acres, and we're in the process of developing a high-rise that will consist of about 350,000 square feet of office, 330 apartments. The ground floor will have some retail and Greenwise. We're happy to say we're doing one of the first Greenwise stores with Publix on the ground level, and then we'll have shared parking and an amenities deck on top. My role in particular, early on when I didn't have a lot of projects going on, I assisted the main development manager on all of the due diligence for both of the parcels and closing on the parcels, and negotiations with Broward College on the office tower right here. We are ground leasing the property from Broward College, and we had a lot of a nice relationship partnership with them. And now in this phase of the project, I work with the Greenwise on the Publix portion. I help negotiate the lease, and I'm doing a lot of the coordination between Publix and the residential group. And it's currently under construction, and we're on finished the third level. We're starting the fourth level soon. So here's just another photo of the property. And from our perspective, this is one of the largest projects that we've done, and it really is a group, a team effort with basically the entire company. I really can say I think that everybody is working on this project, or it feels like it really is. It's not one person, not one department. It really is a team effort, and everybody sort of has their hands in it, and we're all really proud of this project here. So this is what the ground level will look like. Also some other photos. This is all on Las Olas. So this is Las Olas and 2nd. And this is what it will look. This is on the office side. And this is the apartments. So we have, this is the city parking garage right here. The Stiles office is right over there on that side.
Can you talk a little bit about the ground lease with Broward College and that relationship? I think it's really interesting.
Yes, it is, and for me, I was really thankful to be a part of that, because it was something very unique and interesting that I hadn't experienced, and I think a lot of, had before, was just a unique partnership. So this parcel, we assembled 2 different parcels. So it's really, the office tower is where the Broward College property is, and they owned the property for a long time. Their building was aging, and really what they did is they put out kind of an RFP for people to develop the property. So that was really a partnership with development and in construction. We have some business development folks that are really familiar with putting out these like private-public partnership type packages. So we did that, and we went through a real competitive set. That was about, I want to say that was in late 2015, early 2016 was when that was occurring. And we had several meetings with Broward College, and it went down from several that applied for the initial RFP, and then we were in competition with one other firm, and we had several presentations. At the time, Terry was still with us, and he personally did all of the presentations for the Broward College, and we were awarded the project. So at that point, we then commenced negotiating a ground lease with them, where Broward College was the landlord, and then us, Stiles, our group, was the tenant. And that took a long time, because it was, Broward College was a quasi-government entity, so there was an added just layer involved. It wasn't typical of just negotiating a ground lease with a typical landlord. There were a lot of really specific, and that we'll get into sort of a bigger conversation I think we're going to have about just, partnerships and social responsibility and involving your community. But there were a lot of things that we did with the Broward College to ensure that their needs were getting met, and some of them were very specifically as they wanted. They were taking their building that they were in, which we demolished, and moving all of the students next door into that new building. So they still have a presence on campus downtown. And it was very, very important to them for us to develop something that would help create a sense of community downtown and be welcoming for their students. So we actually, if we go back here, this is our retail that's going to be fronting Las Olas on year 2nd. And we made commitments to them to try to lease to student-friendly establishments. Smoothie shop, a sandwich shop, not a place where you're going to go and get a $20 lunch each time. They knew that they were going to have a lot of students downtown. They wanted to really make it a place where students were welcomed, and so we committed to doing that. We committed to also having I don't know what the right word is, but sort of like a screen like this that would go up against the wall, so we could have community events, movie nights. You could possibly have a graduation down here. We could set up bleachers, and so that was really important to us in the planning in the beginning. And Broward College was involved every step of the way. So then it was also the process was interesting, because then once when we were awarded the project, we had to go and actually get a vote from the Board of Trustees. So that was a really big deal, big event for us. And it took quite some time to negotiate the lease. And also, we had a series of other documents involved that we negotiated, a separate development agreement that would commit to, they had to close by a certain date, move all of their students out. We had to commit to demolishing the building at a certain date and not disturbing anything downtown. And so it really was an interesting process, and it took a while, and it was friendly as well. So it was really, really good, nice feeling to partner with them. So we truly feel like they are our partners. So yeah, we're under construction now, and we expect to be done towards the end of 2020. So, but that's one of several projects that I work on right now. Another one. This is my main project, and this is what takes up a majority of my time. Is I'm working on Monarch Town Center. It's located in Miramar, Florida, on the northwest corner of Miramar Parkway and Flamingo Road. We recently purchased in December 22.5 acres, and we're developing a 150,000 square foot shopping center here. You can see it's anchored by Publix. We also have signed leases with Ross, Five Below, Planet Fitness, AutoZone. I started on the project. This kind of gives you an idea of the span, because these projects, when we're involved for several years, from the beginning of the conception of the project all the way until the end. Until we sell it or CO it and send it to property and asset management, or we sell it. So I got involved in August of 2016. We partnered with another group called the Ferber Group. They're based out of Jupiter, and they had initially put the property under contract. It was for sale. They had gotten Publix interested in the site, and then they were more of a single tenant, like a small developer, and so they approached us and said, hey, will you partner with us? And this is a pretty large site, and so we did. And so we have been working on the due diligence. We worked on the due diligence. I got all the entitlements to the project, which we can talk about those kind of things later on in detail. It's always an interesting process. And we signed up these leases and closed in December. So at this point, I work with architecture, I work with leasing, I've been working with our construction firm, and I'm in for building permits and expect to start work at the end of April. So these are some renderings of the property of what it's going to look like. This is the public side. You can see, you can see, like with the main, we really spent a lot of time branding the block, but even on these projects, we brand them. It's if you are familiar with Miramar, there's Monarch is a big name down there. They have Monarch Lakes, and we're in the Monarch Lakes area, so we named it Monarch Town Center. Our logo has a butterfly. We have butterflies in our renderings. We're incorporating butterfly-friendly plants, and so then this is kind of what the inline shop space will look like, and this is the entryway into the building. So another project that I work on, it's we have 38 acres under contract in a small village called Gulf, Florida. It's probably most have you heard of it? No. It's near Boynton Beach, borders Boynton Beach. It's a very, very tiny, like a master plan development for Gulf. It really only encompasses one project or one space to the north, and then a space over here that is kind of a master plan community with a large golf course. So the population is very small. We are purchasing the land from the founder's daughter, who is at this point she's in her 80s, and she's looking to divest of some of her properties. And we are partnering with a self-storage warehouse developer who's doing this south side, and then we're doing a grocery-anchored shopping center on the north side. So that is going through entitlements now, and that's extremely interesting because the village hasn't had a lot of development. In fact, they've had almost none. So we're sort of really almost partnering with the village, not financially, but in a sense of really collaborating with them to talk to them about what they want to see, more so than any, not more so than any other project I worked on, but in a different way. Like we really met with the mayor and everybody up front and said, hey, what do you want this to look like? We want to make sure it's compatible with everybody, talking to them about the uses, and we're in for site plan approval now. We're doing a rezoning, a plat, and a comp plan amendment. So then those are my main ones right now, and then we can obviously have a conversation about some of the details, and that's it. Anything?
I have a question. What I noticed is a lot of the bigger plazas are anchored by shops like Publix, like big supermarkets. Like Publix. Can you just, just in detail a little bit, just explain and just clarify why, one of the reasons, you try to, quote unquote partner with them?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One of the main reasons is that really is almost why, a Publix, a Ross, a Target, a grocery store, big stores like that, there's a reason why we call them the anchor shops, because they sort of anchor the shopping center. So that really is what draws in the rest of the shoppers, and then really they kind of funnel into the other shop space. So the smaller tenants that go in there, your nail salons, your restaurants, things like that, they want to see a larger tenant in there because they know that that's how they sort of feed off and get there, because Publix is the destination for the shopping center, not particularly some of those other stores. So and it also has to do with their when you have a store that size, that's really where you're gonna get a bulk of your income from, because, and then your risk is sort of spread out, because then you don't have a whole bunch of small, small shops that make up that. And then, for other financial reasons, it's better to have like a large established brand inside your shopping center, meaning it's better to sell it off to other investors, because they wanna see that long-term, safe income stream there.
So, speaking of the anchor tenant, how long do you guys see for them to stay in place?
For big anchor tenants, we usually sign 15 to 20-year leases, and then for the smaller shop spaces, it could be 5 to 10 years. Yes?
How long did you do the ground lease for? Like, when you guys do ground leases, is there a certain time period that you look at getting a ground lease for, so you're not constantly in negotiations?
Well, for us, when we go back, I'll go back to say, here's the best example. When I normally do ground leases, I do a ground lease where I'm the landlord and I'm leasing to the tenant. The Broward College example is very atypical. And usually we sign ground leases for at least 10 years.
Okay, like, so with Broward College, how long?
That one was a very long term lease,
99.
99 years,
Oh.
yes.
Which is actually also not a surprising number.
Yeah, that's
So
normal for.
this is kind of the thing of 3 generations, half-life of a building, which is my question later. Years ago we did a trip to Singapore, and all land in Singapore on the island is owned by the government. Even if you have a private bank building on top of that, it's a land lease or ground lease for 99 years.
So that it's normal in that sense. I meant it's atypical for what we normally do in the retail group.
Just on the side, under Florida law, a 99-year lease is viewed almost equal to a fee simple ownership. You can actually build and sell condominiums on a 99-year lease. As a marketing matter, most developers don't do it because people get the look that this gentleman just had. You're kidding me? I'm gonna buy a condo that I can't pass along to my great-great-grandchildren. But legally, you can do that. So it's an interesting dynamic there.
Are you, sorry, let me follow up on this context then. Are you, when you start building new construction, are you actually considering to tear it down in 30 or 50 years again? Are you creating a demolition plan like architectural studios now have to demonstrate all over the world? You can build this, but here's the plan, how we deconstruct it. Or is that not common yet for holiday?
No, I haven't seen that at all.
The only thing we're doing that for,
Deadliness.
that I've seen, is parking structures.
Mm-hmm.
Today,
Because-
because we think that there's gonna be a change in the way people relate to their cars, that parking structures, if you build them in traditional, they're 8 to 9 floor to floor, and you can't do anything else with it. So today, you'll see in many areas, a parking structure is a big box, and they bring in structural, well, not structural, but metal and electronic parking situations and ramps and everything else. So at some point, they can yank those out and turn that into some other use.
I can tell you when they were planning for our big project, there was a significant time spent talking about that. What's the future of planning? Is there a way we can reuse we have 7 levels of parking. Was there a way we can convert that later on? And because you're right, the parking landscape is definitely changing.
Really? Sorry.
No, it's okay. So with the Broward, did they choose the ground lease because, was there a specific reason that they chose to do a ground lease instead of selling?
Well, that was Broward College's decision in the way.
It's state-owned land.
Yeah.
The state
Okay.
doesn't give up dirt,
Yeah.
is the bottom line.
Okay,
Yeah,
and then,
that's their long-term. Oh, no, that's cool.
I heard a great presentation about the business side of that just a couple weeks ago at a ULI event, so I'm jumping in from
Oh, no,
what I
that's
heard
fine.
there.
makes
It's
sense,
really
so they
interesting
continue to
project.
just make money. They just continue to make money on the land.
Well, they get a lease payment, yeah.
Yeah. I know you said you had a couple presentations to go to when you were going with the other firm that was also in competition with you guys. What do you think was the biggest determinant factor that set you guys apart versus them?
I mean, honestly, what I really think it was the Stiles reputation and the fact that we are our long-term partner. We are headquartered right next door. We've developed 4 million square feet of downtown properties, and that we were a real community partner. That's my perception. I can't speak for the decision makers, but I really think that made a huge difference. And obviously they looked at the numbers as well, but I think that really was a deciding factor.
You can go some of the insight as far as the nationalized area regarding to demand and supply, your projections.
I don't want to speak for our brokers because frankly, it's just not an area where I'm focused on. But I believe that, there really is a lot of demand. This is the first office building being built in almost 20 years from the ground up. I can't quote specific rents or occupancy rates, but I see a lot of changing down there. I don't know if you have other clients that are.
Yeah, there's a couple of things happening. You're talking about the main.
Well, yeah, he was at.
Yeah, the office component, actually, they already have 2 or 3 major law firms that have gone into it.
Yes.
And just to give you, Holland and Knight is in an older building that we're in what was the SunTrust building. So we're 2 blocks east of that, and we had a discussion, which I guess I shouldn't really talk about, but we're gonna look, our lease is up in 2 years. And there isn't a lot of space. We need 2 floors. We got 60 lawyers in Fort Lauderdale. And one of the things we're gonna look at is that building. For a bunch of different reasons, by the way. It's the newest.
New technology.
All the technology. We're in a building that's now putting lipstick on a pig. That's the way to describe it. I mean, they've been renovating a 30-year-old building. I joke, I was pregnant with my 28-year-old son when I first moved into that building. So, that the older buildings, there hasn't been a major spec office building built in downtown Fort Lauderdale, probably since you guys did the Bank of America, which is now 10 or 12 years old, right?
It was, I think, it was built in 2002, so.
Yeah.
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 And which means they started planning for it at least 4 years before that.
I think the more interesting question about the Maine is we have 1,700 residential units, multifamily rentals, coming online in the next year or 2
Yes.
in downtown Fort Lauderdale. And candidly, I'm not quite sure where all those people are. You all moving to downtown Fort Lauderdale? By the way, I'm not living in those apartments. There's not enough room for my shoes.
Yeah, they're really, a lot of are trending towards smaller apartments. I know
Really
that's
small.
what, the ones at the Maine will be. I mean, we're also working on another one, on the river called the Alluvian, which is more of a higher end, larger, but, I mean, the rents
I
are
looked at the units
starting
there, by
at
the way.
$3,000, so it's.
And the largest is a 3.5, because I was looking at it. And it's, rents will be between 5,000 and I think it's either 7,000 or 9,000. And the largest unit is 1,700 square feet for a 3.5.
So if you think about
So
the
think
size of your
about
house,
carving-
it's very small.
Yeah, it's very, at that point, who cares?
So, but 1,700 is the largest unit. Well, that's it.
Yes, that is.
Yeah.
We looked
Eight to
at,
10,
we looked
eight.
at the floor plans, at last week.
Yeah.
Now, I was just looking at it.
And the potential asking price then would be like 8 to 10
They
grand?
have, for that unit, what you guys have online right now is that the rents would range, I think it was between 5,300 and 7,500 a month, something like that.
Well, we're talking about, this one is marketed as a very high-end luxury as opposed to, the Maine is more marketed towards students or the younger population, so we have different product types.
If you
To
just.
put this in perspective, if you do just bad mathematics over the thumb, that is more than the college entry level graduate will make a year. You're dropping down there as a base rent, no utilities yet.
But the market they're looking to is me, the empty nester who's done worrying about the swimming pool and the backyard, which is why we've been looking at it also at certain stages in your life. It doesn't make sense in the state of Florida to own any longer, except that if the only rental that you can get is going to cost you $9,300 a month, which is what we just looked at the MSRED, which is a very high end, also a Stiles Rockefeller.
Former Stiles, you sold it off.
We did sell it,
Yeah,
yes,
sold
so
it.
we developed it, yes.
said 1,700 apartments coming online when, next year, by next year?
Within the next, there's under construction right
Oh,
now.
by the time they finish.
Yeah, approved or under construction being built.
I mean, they're real, they're not the ones that just got site plan approval. These are the ones that have broken ground, they are under construction, and they are coming rolling in the next. There are literally, 1, 2, 3 buildings that are just surrounding, there's another reason why I'm gonna tell the Stiles people how they should sell it. There's one street in downtown Fort Lauderdale, Southeast 2nd Street, which today, if you leave the Bank of America building backs onto it and the SunTrust. We're about to have 900 residential units built that are gonna also back onto that same road. You can't get out of the building today. Yeah, I'm a developer person talking about too much traffic. And I'm gonna turn to Dan in a moment to talk about how we fix this. But that we have a downtown that is so, we're finally recognizing everything we ever wanted to be as a really a great city with intensity and congestion, because you need that to be a great city. But people still need to move around. And unless we give them, I'm not getting on one of those scooters. I got too many broken parts.
Well, she actually answered it, or she just said it, with the whole intensity of the city, like New York City, that sort of thing that we're moving towards. I'm thinking, small space, expensive apartments. I mean, do you really think we're at that level in South Florida?
I think so. If you want to live in a downtown environment, I think yes.
Okay.
There are a couple of different perspectives to look at it from. Good morning, everybody. New York boy, Long Island, Manhattan was a train ride away, and then I worked in the Bronx for 8.5 years, right up in Yankee Stadium. And when I moved here 23 years ago, I got off the plane and looked at Fort Lauderdale, and there were 2 towers, the 110 Tower and the old Barnett Bank Tower, and I went, that's a city? I literally went, that's a city. I went, not the city I'm used to seeing. Today, 23 years later, we're turning into an urbanized area. Broward County for many years created urban sprawl. I'm as far west as you can get in Broward County because the alligators are in my backyard. Nothing's going to be further west than me. But we've created this county that spreads out over 31 cities with 2 million people. The question now becomes redevelopment. And that's what we're seeing a ton of downtown. There's still vacant land. Stiles owns a whole lot of it out by the Sawgrass Technology Park. You see the Tropica. You see urban centers moving around the county. Way back when there was a thought process, probably 40 years ago, that there'd be 4 main cities in Broward County, literally north, south, east, and west. And that's where the hubs were going to be in Broward County. Instead, we've created 31 little separate communities, and people choose which one they want to live in based on where they want to be. But you look at Fort Lauderdale, and there was an election a year ago, and there's different people who were thinking different things. And that's the question: is where's political will? Where's, using today's phrase of the day, where's the NIMBYism? How do we move people? Debbie's right. Lawyer by background, prosecuted adults, murderers, and drug dealers. Okay, now I do what I do.
Set him up perfectly for the.
It's so for me, I've been in the worst parts of the world, and now I'm in the best part of the world. And sitting on the planning council, it's a collegial group, and we deal with land use changes. We don't look at site plans. I try to tell people not to look at site plans, and people will come with the pretty picture, and I say, don't look at the pretty picture, because it's not that. We're giving an entitlement to a use, and it's all around this county, and I try to keep the county out of that decision-making process. I try to say, and I've gotten the council to believe, and Debbie sees it all the time, what's the local community's desire? Because they're the ones that choose to make that home, and what do they want? And I'm a big proponent of home rule for local communities. I am. I fight for that in the legislature. The 60 days of wackiness is going on in Tallahassee now, and I'm going up there in a week and a half to continue to fight for that. But it's about what does a local community want in coordination with Stiles, and then they bring Debbie along to say, hey, here's what we want to do. Is this okay? Is this not okay? What's your thought? Where are you going as a community? And then part of my job is to go out into my community, if it's a development out by me, and sell it to my community. I've sat down with developers who want to do a redevelopment project, and he said, an old hotel out by me, and the developer came in and said, here's what I'm thinking. We said, put that away. Would you like to do this? And he went, government doesn't act that way. I said, well, we're not a normal government. We said, bigger, grander, more. We want. A lot of governments don't. So we look at it and say, we have a vision of where, not only where we are today, but where we're going. And for me, planning, it's not 1 year, it's not 3 years. It's 5, 10, and 20 years. I want my kids, one of them who's a student, a couple of buildings over, in the PT program, I want them to make this home. So what I do in coordination with Debbie and the folks at Stiles is try to say, how do I keep my kids in this community? Why do they want to come back? But most importantly, I'm a big transportation proponent guy. How do we get people out of cars and do a transit system so we can become like a New York? By creating the urban sprawl we didn't save enough space necessarily to put it. Okay, so I've always been one of those that says, you want to put buses on the road or mass transit on the road, build a lane or take a lane. If you're going to put that bus on the road, it's going to slow traffic down. Is that making people happy or not happy? And so how do you deal with that? So there's lots of competing issues. Light rail would be great, 20 years worth, but you got to build a ridership, so you got to put them on something first. So it's planning that far out in coordination with the development community of what they see, and they got to get their bang for their buck. Understand it. That's what makes it go, and they should. But how is it beneficial to the community as well? So those are the competing interests we look at.
You know, it's interesting. Let me share a couple of statistics. And when you were talking earlier, kind of about plagiarism and all of that, you know, there's a lot of amazing data out there that helps you understand community dynamics, growth, expansion, economic development. So just want to share a website that was at a presentation that Dan and I were at yesterday. The Broward Workshop has an annual State of the County. Is it there? Yeah. Okay. And it's 1,000 of our nearest friends at the Signature Grand. Yesterday, the keynote speaker was the governor. The first speaker, though, outside speaker, was this guy. Let me see. Carvajal. He is with the Florida Chamber. They have on their website the Florida scorecard. It has, and it's going to be updated March 22nd. They have data on all economic trends, growth, job growth, population growth, disbursement, recession predictors. Unbelievable. They have it statewide and they have it county by county. We have 67 counties in the state of Florida. Phenomenal data. To give you an idea of one of the things they talked about, Broward County currently has 28,000 individuals looking for jobs. No, jobs looking for people, and 33,000 or something like that people looking for jobs. So it's a very interesting dynamic with an incredibly low unemployment rate. We also have something like 50 people coming to this county every day. I mean, and there's a few things. Number one, it's in-migration, and it's people actually moving from more expensive areas, if you can believe that, to here or coming from colder climes. It's also birth rate. You have 2 children?
Yes.
I have 2, who are gone, by the way. They left this for reasons that Dan is trying to fix. They wanted a more urban environment. They live in DC. And he contributed 3. I mean, people are now not just moving here from someplace else, but we have a lot of natives who are staying. So in terms of growth and potential, I think I always wondered, I've been doing this in Broward County since 1983. I've been practicing law for 40 years, and I was 12. And No, I was 12, I have to admit I was 12. And when I first came here, which was way back when, I worked on Monarch Lakes, which was all of this, our only neighbors were cows. We had cows all around us, and in fact, I was at a number of groundbreaking ceremonies where there was a team that came in before they put up the tent to move the cows. They would cow tipping, this is cow moving, and to take care of whatever the cows had left behind. So today, you know, the decision was made way back then. Broward County, and Dan alluded to this, between 1985 and 1989, the state of Florida did our first round of growth management regulation. If you haven't had that course yet, we've got 2 great teachers. I worked with both of them, trained both of them many, many years ago. But what the decision that Broward County made was that we were going to spread out our density like peanut butter. Boy, what a mistake. What were we thinking? It's only now that we are rethinking what we did, and a number of the suburban cities, as well as the legacy cities, Hollywood, Pompano, Fort Lauderdale, the cities that have been around for 100 years, everybody's rethinking how we're going to absorb this greater population, how we're going to create high enough paying jobs that they can afford to live here. And if you don't know, if you haven't read in the newspaper, Broward County is the most cost burdened community in the country. Meaning people spend more than we have over 60% of the population of Broward County spends more than 30% of their monthly income on household expenses. So think about it, run the numbers for yourself.
Exactly, take that second and run your own numbers, include utilities and discount your roommates.
Yeah, and then when you add on to that because you have to own a car, you're now spending 19% of your take-home income on transportation, whether that's the Uber driver or your car insurance, car payments, whatever it is. So it's an expensive place to live, which affects everything that we do. So I was going to ask Jessica a question. How much, because it goes to what I think is the most vexing issue as we try to respond to the growing population here, how much work did you do with the surrounding residential?
Oh, quite a bit, and I can talk a little bit about that, and that is, each municipality has a different process on how you work with the neighbors, but you always are going to work with your neighbors when you're developing a property. So here in the city of Miramar, they require you to hold a public meeting that is publicly noticed and sent out to everyone, I think in either 1,000 or 500-foot radius. So ours went out to thousands of people, because right here to the north is we have Monarch Lakes Townhome Association, and then this right here just to the west is actually some commercial property, but it is some office condos, and so we sent out a notice and we went and held our public meeting in the city of Miramar at the municipal center over there with the city planners were there, and we gave a presentation, we talked to the neighbors. So the process for this one in particular was we did that, and we had quite a few that showed up. We addressed their concerns, and it's usually always the same concerns. So these are things that we know about, we try to proactively manage, and we try to incorporate it into our projects already. So we spoke with the neighbors, and we agreed to build an 8-foot concrete wall all the way along the back, which was in the city of Miramar. It was not a code requirement. Some cities require it, some cities don't. And then we really talked to them a lot about their main concerns, which were, what were they going to see, and what kind of noise were they going to hear, and what were they going to smell. So, we have things that we do to mitigate that. We talk to them about when do we think the truck delivery times are going to be, what can we do to try to reduce smells from the dumpsters, and really talk to them about the construction schedule. So, for a long-term strategy, what I do is I'm always going to be the main contact from the start all the way to the end. So it's really important to me to build a good relationship with the neighbors. So This association to the north of us, they have a professional property management company, and so I actually was just emailing their manager yesterday. She was asking, what date are you going to break ground? You know, we always kind of let them know what's going on, so that they're not surprised or taken aback, and we can address any issues right away. And I have a format that I use. I used it on my very first project, and I use it for all my projects now, and it's a neighborhood newsletter. So could be in a PDF format, and it will have a rendering of the project to the top, and it will have a section of, here's the tenants that we have coming to the shopping center, here's when they're gonna open, here are the major construction milestones coming up, and here's my contact information, you know, call me if you need anything. So I do that for all my projects.
And it's important, and Debbie and I deal with this a lot, because Debbie represents a lot of folks who develop out by name. Cows, when I moved here 23 years ago, Weston was a master plan community. It wasn't a city yet. It became a city in 1996, and across the street, in the last community that Arvida built, when I moved in, there were cows across the street. When I first visited Weston that many years ago before that, there was four-way stop signs. That's how Arvida developed its community. Today, fast forward to a city of 70,000 people, the #1 city according to Money Magazine in the state of Florida. I don't care about rankings. Cities apply for rankings, cities spend a lot of money going to get rankings. We get recognized as one of the safest cities, one of the most family-friendly cities. I don't care about what the rankings say, are my residents happy? My business partners that want to choose to make Weston their business home happy. That's what I care about. If the rest of the world doesn't want to recognize us, that's okay. Because for me, the people I choose to make us home are happy, we're doing our job. We're a contract city. We have 10 employees. Different than almost any other city you're going to find in this country. 10 employees. We started with 1. Okay, so everything with us is pretty much outsourced. To me, a property owner is a shareholder. We view things in a very corporate manner. Our job is to improve your investment. So when you buy your property, and then when you sell it, whenever it is, you better be making money. And that's how we look at things. What's your ROI? Real simple. From the very beginning of the city, we used to create and distribute annual reports to our shareholders. It gets a little expensive after all of that. Plus with the internet, you can just push stuff out every week. But really, how do you view your government? How do you view your community in coordination with developers and lawyers to make it a holistic community? If Debbie's coming in with a project, we will say to her, it's not a formal process. Go out and meet with the community. We encourage the interaction, as Jess says, to go out and say, hey, this is what we're thinking. Some people they know are not going to like it whatever it is. There's a whole lot of them out there. The question is, if they own the property, how do we not deprive them of their rights? Because that becomes a whole separate issue. And how do we make it a win-win for everybody? And in today's world, because of social media, and I am not a social media guy, I do no social media. I hear a lot about social media. So when a developer comes in to propose a project, the thing explodes. I've got it going on right now in my community where FDOT wants to build a park and ride on the edge of I-75. We passed a resolution saying yes, and now our community's going, we're too good for a park and ride. I don't really care. I mean, I care. But it's, no, this is about how do we get cars off the roadway. It's going to take an express bus at 4 o'clock in the morning and take people to the MIC in Miami, which then connects to the trains and move people around Miami and come back early enough in the afternoon so it's non-peak travel, express bus. And my folks are literally writing. I'm not getting out of my $70,000 car and putting it in the parking lot. This isn't for us. Tell them to go put it somewhere else. Sorry, I view things in a more regional way. And Debbie's heard me be at events where people say, you're out in Weston, you don't have affordable housing. You don't have needs. And I go, one, we do. We just do it and hide it behind nice landscaping. We've got issues in our city that are just like everybody else. You might not hear about it, but it's there. Okay? Because every city is the same. Because we have social issues everywhere. But it's about the bigger community. I care about my sandbox, but there's a bigger sandbox. And how do we make that bigger sandbox work? So, sorry to get off. It's just, for me, that's, I can go for hours.
So I have a question here. The introduction said you moved about 23 years ago to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Have you moved around in Florida, or have you moved just to Weston and just got stuck with Weston and fell in love with this?
Yep. And you couldn't move me, you couldn't,
So you're telling me you're all of those people who are definitely the outlier of the statistic who didn't flip the house every 7 years?
When we moved here in '96 after the blizzard in New York, we rented a house. We actually were looking in Silver Lake in Pembroke Pines. Silver Lake had expanded that much that the piece they were building then was actually Miramar schools. And we didn't want to send our kids to Miramar schools. Needless to say, within 3 weeks, we were under contract to build a brand new home in Weston. Our family outgrew that home, and we moved 1,000 yards around the block to a bigger home. And now I went from a 3,700 square foot 5-bedroom home, and now I live in a 4-bedroom townhouse.
Let me follow up on this. In a other specific class, I kind of torture my students with the saying, what are places? Places are spaces with felt value, culture, and identity. How do you implement culture and identity and that felt value in Weston?
You should talk about town center.
We should talk, we should.
Yeah,
We should talk
it's-
about the disaster.
Yes, yeah.
Let me try to put it this way. I have attended a number of national conferences, U.S. Conference of Mayors. So you see mayors from all over the country, and we look in the past 10 years and you see social issues going on and violence going on in certain communities. And mayors from across the country, or even locally, will say to me, you're out in Weston, you don't have those problems. To which my response is, I can see a racial divide. Come to my community, Colombian, Venezuelan, Brazilian, everyone's generally white skinned. But yet the diversity divide is significant. I can use a word in Spanish that in Venezuela, to the Venezuelans, I just cursed your mother out. To the Colombians, I gave you a compliment. So by me, when it comes to culture, what is that culture? And how do we all assimilate together to become one community? And it's really, in my community, difficult. Because some people stay insular to their community. Town center, the last thing Arvida did before they left Weston was drop in town center. And it was one of the first town centers to be developed, where every bay is too small, there's not enough circulation, and there's not enough mass. Arvida sold it to a property owner who's CMBS'd it, is listing it for an awful lot of money, has been offered his purchase price plus, and still won't put his name, he'll put his name on the contract, he won't put the pen on the paper. To me, Debbie brought in a bunch of dance partners, and he won't sign the contract. I know what I want. I know what I see. And for all I care, they take the entire project down to the ground and start over. I'm okay with that. Because to me, we need a vibrant downtown. We don't have it. Will my community say yes to that? When there was another proposed project at a golf course that lasted 14 months, that ended last year, everyone said, put it over there, downtown, town center. Now that that other project got defeated on the golf course, will they say, oh, we really don't want anything? Who knows? But we're trying to create that sense of place. Different than, out by me, almost everybody lives behind a gate. So there's no mass transit because it's too far to get to a bus from your gated community, because you may be 2 miles inside of a community that you've not got to walk to get to the bus stop. So it is challenging by me, but that's the community you choose to be in.
Let me give some meat on the placemaking question for town center, and I raise it because it's been very frustrating. Having worked with a number of really fabulous national developers, Stiles included, we danced with them for a while. The town center was, as Dan said, was really built in the 1980s.
Yep.
It has about 200 and something thousand square feet of dysfunctional, or I should say dysfunctional. It doesn't work for for a contemporary retail center. It's just designed
It's a fancy
wrong.
food court.
It's just designed wrong. And it's got some office components in it that honestly don't belong there. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that it's not a place that, other than going, and I'm gonna quote the city manager, John Flint, who said, you go there with your kids, you get a cup of coffee at Starbucks, you get your kids ice cream at Kilman's, you walk around one turn on Main Street, and there's nothing else to do. So right?
I go there, I get my hair done, and then I go to the cheese course, and then I go home.
Yeah, so, the developers that, and master plan, who have looked at this seriously, invested a lot of money to create a sense of place here. They're looking at adding anywhere from 400 to 600 residential units. By the way, what I'm describing to you is where Dan said, when we met with clients, with he and with other members of the city administration, they said, it's all about design. We're not worried about intensity. We want it to look good, we want it to function well, and we want it to create a vibrant downtown. So it was, say, 600 residential units, 150 to 200 room hotel. I'll tell you the hotel statistic, which is kind of interesting, in Weston, a multiplex movie theater, a promenade, and adding another 50 to 100,000 square feet of retail, and basically taking the retail that's there and recreating it, because it's got some bones in it that you're going to build, and you can't afford to demolish the whole site. You just can't do it. So you have to figure out a way to reimagine it and add uses that create the sense of place that you're talking about. And that's done not just through the uses, but through the design. Creating walkways. Today, if you drive into Weston Town Center and you've never been there, you don't know how to get to the cheese course. You don't even know the cheese course is there. And you know how to get to Publix, and then you get caught in the public parking lot, and you're going like this.
You can't get out.
You can't get out. By the way, largest per square performing Publix, I think, in the country.
Yep.
It's like at $900 in sales a square foot, unheard of.
And it's a small store.
And it's a tiny store. And they have a ground lease, 50 years, and there's plenty of time left on it. So in looking and reimagining town center, it's adding pedestrian walkways. It's adding and reworking the on-site circulation so that when you come into this place, you're directed to park your car, get out of your car, and start walking around, and there's some place to go. The first time that this project was discussed with me was John Flint at your first after party of his first swearing in. And John said, we were at a wine bar that I don't think is there anymore at Town Center, and John said to me, there's no there there. There's no there there. That's, he wants there. Yeah, yes.
And there's no parking, because I live in Weston, there's absolutely no parking.
You just want to be close to the public sector.
There's
I'm telling
there's
you, you don't know where
parking,
it is.
there's parking, you just wanna be in the front door. And
Well,
I got it, the problem is there's only so many spaces in the front door. But there's,
well, I don't know, I don't see the parking, just like probably what you say, the layout of the whole thing.
yeah, it's.
But I mean, when you drive in, it's like, where do I go?
Yeah, no, it's, the layout, and Debbie has brought a variety of development groups in, and I've seen good, bad, and different. We had a development group come in and say they just wanted to make an infill project, we said, there's the door, get out. Okay, we've got significant underutilized parking areas that folks say they just want to drop a residential component on. I'm going, sorry, that's not what I want. I just don't want residential density. It's got to be a redo that includes the density and make the project better. We said, somebody literally came in and said, I'm just gonna drop residential. I said, no. So the current owner thinks at some point he's gonna be missing something. So he's trying to find partners to dance with on the residential side. He's not a residential developer. And the problem becomes, he can't create that right synergy because you gotta get someone who can design the whole project. You just can't say, drop this in here, work this piece here, and they're gonna work. The problem is also in Town Center, there's 3 buildings that are not owned by the same owner. So when you go down by the bell tower, and the EWM building, those 3 buildings down there are owned by different people. So if you're gonna redo this significant piece of property, to us, you need to go out and get those 3 parcels. Either that or you gotta create a development agreement with those owners to reskin and potentially build around their buildings. And that's how a lot of cities have advisory boards and planning and zoning boards. Yeah, we did away with that. You got something you want to bring forward, you're going to come straight, you're going to deal with staff, and then you're going to come straight to the city commission. We have no planning and zoning board. Been there, done that, no more. I was the one that said get rid of it. And at the time, the former mayor went, "What are you doing?" I said, "Just have them come to us." Because you can have a bunch of advisory people who are gonna say, do this, do this, do this, and what happens if we don't like it? So just come straight to us. Yeah, we're the decision makers. People elected us. Some people want us to be gone right about now, that's okay. I'm gone in November 2020 because I'm termed out. But to me, it's about, again, today, short term, 20 years from now, where's this city, where's our community gonna be? And to me, part of that is visionary. So from a monetary standpoint, from a design standpoint, from a utility standpoint, from a community standpoint, where you going? You build something today, you may be building a physical structure for today, but where is it in community sense into the future? You look at Maine, and it's remarkable watching what's going on there. Just look at the whole downtown Fort Lauderdale explosion. And they have a whole new city commission who came in and went, we're not sure we want to do that. Well, it's a little too late for some of it. How do you pay for all of these things? How does a city function and provide its services and make it affordable by way of millage or other things where you're taxing your residents? Change the city commission, change the philosophy. And Stiles has got 5 projects underway. What happens in the future with those? So I mean, that's what's difficult. So.
Do any of the cities and on the developer side, is anyone taking into account the rising water levels in Florida?
Yep. Let me put on my Broward Planning Council hat. Broward had a land development code that they did in 1974. It wasn't redone, it was designed for urban sprawl. We just completed a 2-year project called Broward Next, where we did the entire comprehensive plan, and now we're doing the land development code. Significant consideration, 1 for redevelopment, but 2 sea level rise, resilience. A project came forward in Wilton Manors a 1.5 years ago. That was the first project that dealt with on-site retention under the new code, dealing with sea level rise. So yeah, it's one of those things that are considered as part of the development review process. You have to look at water, you have to look at runoff. So yeah, the cities are very concerned about it, especially those on the east side with king tide and how do you deal with it. There are a lot of conversations going on.
To chime in. Oh, go ahead.
No, this is actually a national issue. And it was interesting. Holland and I we have 28 offices around the world and 50 land use lawyers stretching from South Florida to Boston, across the country to Oregon and California and Texas. And we all had a meeting about 3 weeks ago and talked about what were the most vexing issues. And one of the things that we found vexing was the way local government is dealing with climate change issues. There's 2 things. Number one, it's a little bit inconsistent right now because government doesn't quite know how to get its arms around it. But from a practitioner standpoint, when a number of the regulations that municipalities are imposing is they're saying things like, tell us how you're going to address climate change. And I'm like, whoa, I am not dealing with the Greenland Glacier. You know, that is a much bigger issue. That is something we have to be dealing with through CO2 emissions. You know, so government is looking at each little parcel and saying, how are you going to address climate change? Well, the response is, I'm not going to fix the problem, but I will tell you that we are building, and I'm sure you're going through this, Jessica. Give you an example of a coastal project I permitted just a couple of years ago. The state of Florida had not redone their coastal engineering maps. So they were telling us that base flood elevation for this building should be at 12. The coastal engineer on the project said, we've done the modeling, and if you don't want your basement to flood as sea level starts, you need to be 8 inches higher. So our project came in 8 inches higher. Now, here's the good news. We were in a city that measured your base flood elevation based upon your FEMA standard and other, there's a lot of cities where I wouldn't be allowed to raise that building 8 inches and maximize the height of the building. This particular city, we were able to do that because of the way they measured height. So this building, and in fact, it was a controversial project, it got approved, it's under construction today, but one of the more farsighted elected officials on that dais said to one of the objectors, the objectors lived in a building that was built in the 1970s, and he turned to this objector and said, you know, when the next hurricane comes, you're going to take refuge in their building, because their building is meeting and exceeding flood control standards. So I think government hasn't quite caught up. One of the things that I'm seeing in a number of the local zoning regulations, in the older, I do a lot of work in, aside from Weston, Hollywood, Pompano, and Fort Lauderdale. They are all looking at their zoning regulations and seeing how they measure height, because they don't want us to limit how we elevate our base flood based upon a cap that they've set that was based upon old science. So I really think government is trying to deal with it. It's a tension though between, we can't solve the problem, we can only adapt the buildings to the new reality.
Well, and you hear in Broward County, you have Dr. Jennifer Harada, who is a leader in climate change and the impact of sea level rise and water and things like that. She really, we redid all the maps. I mean, we are moving at breakneck speed through this redo, and Debbie and her team and Jessica and their team, we sought community buy-in. When we went and redid the land development code and comp plan issues, we said, we want your feedback, because this is about who we are and where we're going, and climate change and transportation go hand in hand. I mean, you literally, it's not one or the other. Like I said, I'm out in Weston. At some point, I very well may have oceanfront and Everglades fronted property. Because at some point, if sea level rise is true what everybody says, it's all going to come out by me, so I'm going to have oceanfront out the front door and the Everglades out the back door. Now, I'm pretty dry because where we are is on limestone. Okay, we're not getting flooded, but there is underground water rise. Where's the water table at? We're working with the South Florida Water Management District as part of the Everglades Forever project, and we have deeded over to the district and to the Corps. They want to build an impoundment area, an above-ground impoundment area in the southwest corner of the city. We said to them, we'll give you the land. Most cities would deed them, would lease them the land. We signed, we said, here's the description, here you go, Mr. Executive Director of the South Florida Water Management District. Here's the deed. Now look at the hydrology. You put the weight of that water above ground, pushes down the water underneath, and then pushes my lake levels up. Oh, that's now in that young lady's backyard. So we look at things and say, okay, how does all these things work? Because when Weston was developing, those lakes, that's a water retention system. It's where every drop of rain goes. Goes into a storm drain and ends up in one of those lakes, and every one of those lakes is interconnected. Every lake in Weston, and we can start pumping 100,000 gallons a minute out the south end of the city. But we can only pump when the district says we can pump. Because everybody else is pumping into that same canal. So if there's when the storm was coming a year and a half ago, somebody said the lakes aren't dropping. We said, put some time. Water has to, by gravity, move it all the way down south end of the city. South end goes down first, north end goes second, and it's designed that way. The planners the smart planners across our community thought about how do we deal with these things, and today's developers and property folks, development teams have to think about where's the water today specifically, what to do with water.
Does anybody live in Hollywood? Hollywood, Florida has some of the worst flooding problems of any of the cities. And they've just done something, and fortunately their voters supported it. Hollywood just passed a $100 million bond issue for parks. And one of the things is to acquire an old golf course, which, by the way, I got killed by social media on when I tried to develop it. It's a whole other story. But half of the site was going to be a lake because the drainage, this is in an area east of I-95. It's older homes were built in the 1950s. The average assessed value of a house in that area is about $130,000. But the house needs a lot of work. The house was built at an elevation of 4.5 feet. The road is maybe at 5, the crown of the road. These areas flood incredibly in any kind of storm event. And the city said that the city wanted to raise the roads. And they said they can't because it'll create swimming pools in people's front lawns. So part of what they are retrofitting is through their bond issue, they're going to acquire, hopefully, this 50-acre parcel, which is a defunct, it's now a paintball thing, okay? And they're going to turn it into a park and nature center, but most of that 50 acres is going to just be a big retention area. Because unlike planning that Weston was able to do, because it was designed in the 1970s and 80s when we knew a little bit more about hydrology than we did in 1910, Hollywood has to figure out ways to fix it without having to flood out their neighborhoods. So the issue, we deal with this stuff every single day.
I did a project in Hollywood and making sure that it didn't flood was a really significant, it wasn't a significant challenge for us.
Is that the Sheridan Shops?
No, it's called Wesley Commons, it's on
Okay.
Sheridan and US 1, and it's anchored by a Publix.
That's what I was thinking
Oh,
of,
yeah, but we ended up putting in 11 injection wells into the ground to handle all of the storm drainage, which is, it's a large amount, it's not typical of a shopping center of that size, which was 13 acres, so.
I mean, listen, 2 years ago, when we had that unnamed storm that decided to show up with little forecasting, and it started dumping water at a rate that was really fast for a significant period of time. And as much as we were pumping water, the lake level was going. And in Weston, not only is the crown of the street at a certain level, each property then has its pad, and then inside each garage there's then a step. So people are seeing water now puddling in their streets. Every intersection is a lake. And I'm supposed to be getting on a boat to go to Bimini for my son's graduation, and literally I needed a rowboat to get out of my community. And I'm leaving. Okay, the mayor normally doesn't leave when the shitstorm's happening, but I was going. And I'm only in Bimini, so it's not that far. But you know what? Everyone was saying we're about to flood, and I went, your house is so far from getting wet, but people have this perception, they see water, and they start freaking out. Listen, most people's biggest investment in life is their home. And all they saw was water creeping and creeping. And I said, relax. Kids were kayaking down the street in Weston. My kids were a number of years ago. We've never had a flood that we couldn't handle. But in older communities, when it comes down, people are getting wet. People are getting wet. So you've got the tension of how do you deal with today's redevelopment competing with, at the same time, we're working in conjunction with the sea level rise issues. And the water issues of drinkable water. I mean, we really have a significant issue here of, and the governor made a point of it yesterday morning, to say, where's the water coming from that we will need to live and drink from? So those are the competing interests. Sure, bring on more units. I'm one of those that believes in smart growth. But you also need the resources around to give us water. And then get rid of the water as it comes out of the sky. And those are really competing interests now.
To add to that, so South Florida Business Journal did last year an event breaking grounds here in Fort Lauderdale, and Mayor of Sunrise, CRA manager of Coral Springs, Hollywood, and others have been there. And I raised the question at the end, what's the biggest threat for your communities in the next 15 to 20 years when we talk about comprehensive plans? And they all, after 90 minutes, different opinions and different variances and answers, they all had one only word to say: sea level rise. So if you, as future leaders of real estate development in Broward County or adjacent counties, if you disregard that environmental threat to your investment, you need to brush up a little bit on how you deal with the engineers, with the planners, with the social impact on that, and with the public finance. What's the property tax on a flooded property? Beachfront property, now completely in ocean. what's the income of you for you as the local government that finances through property taxes? And you finance through what? Property taxes pay for everything else, like infrastructure. If you have a private property flooded, you have zero income. As a real estate developer on that flooded property, what's your income? Zero, minus the tax deductions you get and all this stuff. But this is a threat to your investment portfolio. You put that in real estate terms. Yeah? So how do you overcome that? So if you take notes for today's session, scribble this down. Critical reflection.
There's also an interesting thing there, and I don't think the insurance companies are now underwriting coastal areas or areas susceptible to flooding differently than they are high and dry. And that high and dry may actually end up being, I was going to say Iowa and Nebraska, except they flooded last night. So, you know, there's a whole interesting thing, I don't understand it, but there is a change in the insurance industry that is creating havoc in the real estate industry too.
Listen, when I moved here 23 years ago, you had to have flood insurance out in Weston. FEMA required in the floodplain. Now they've started to take us out of the floodplain. Now, so folks are saying, I don't need the flood insurance. God forbid that thing happens. When Hurricane Sandy skirted past us and made her way up to New York and New Jersey, everyone got destroyed because they got flooded. And everyone put in insurance claims. Very few got paid because the insurance company said, you were flooded. It was a hurricane, but you were water damage from a flood. You didn't have flood insurance, sorry, you're SOL. So you know what, there are times where some insurances are cheaper. It may make sense to just have it in your pocket.
If you get it.
But I'm saying, if you know, but it's
or if you can afford it.
Right. Yeah, as I'm saying, depending on the cost, there's a cost benefit that goes into when you do your pro formas. You gotta figure, okay, I want this. How does the pro forma move if I take this piece out, add this piece in? It's you know, Stiles will decide what community they may want to be in based on what are the costs to be in that community.
We carry costs in our development budget for both builder's risk and flood insurance as well.
Yeah. It's an interesting project. Yes, sir.
Respecting to global warming, are we just kicking the can down the road, or is there anything? Certain areas are just not meant to be developed. Is that the case for South Florida, certain area, coastal areas in particular?
I think
We're trying. Let me try to answer it best this way without giving you a specific answer as to some things happening. I can't tell you why it's happening. I'm not one of those that's going to start giving the answer for it. I don't know. But some things happening. Man-made, natural. I'm not a scientist, so I don't friggin' know. I'm trying to learn as fast as I can, but I know, based on what I do out by me or on the planning council, we got to deal with it. And the coastal communities are in a whirlwind. Okay, when we tried to pass a penny sales tax 2.5 years ago, half a penny was going to go to transportation, half a penny was going to go to city infrastructure. And there were cities on the east side that wanted to use their half a penny to build seawalls. When King Tide shows up in downtown Fort Lauderdale on the New River, her project's wet.
That is true
Wet.
because that actually happened to one of my projects.
It's wet, and you're sitting on the New River in downtown Fort Lauderdale, across the street from Debbie's office. The water's lapping over the top of the bulkhead into across the street from very expensive homes, condos, and office buildings. But that's real. So cities wanted to, you can't stop the water. We're not going to start building walls in everybody's backyard who lives on a canal. Some people want to. And in public spaces, and we're building seawalls. But we have to do something. So the question becomes, when do cities say, there's a height limit, let's say it's 50 feet, just for the sake of picking a number. If she needs to raise her building 12 inches, okay, maybe it now needs to be 62 inches, because her building, by necessity, is 12 inches higher because of potential sea level rise and dealing with it. So 50 now just became 51. So there needs to be some thinking